$212. Not what you owe. What's left? That's the number sitting in Ryan's checking account on a Thursday night in April, the same night his college roommate posted a photo holding the keys to his first house outside Denver. Ryan didn't comment right away. He waited almost 5 minutes, typed "Congrats, man," hit send, and then sat there, wondering why 5 minutes had felt so long. Nobody else noticed. He noticed. Here's the part almost nobody says out loud. Most people are not broke because they're lazy, and they're not behind because they're bad at math. They're behind because of 6 specific decisions, or 6 specific decisions they never got around to making, small in the moment, compounding for 20 years. This isn't a list of hacks. It's the real, unglamorous difference between people who quietly build wealth and people who quietly struggle, one automatic payment at a time. Let's go through all 6, in the order they usually show up in real life. Before any of the 6 moves, there's a number most people have never calculated honestly, because it's not a flattering one to sit with. If your income disappeared tomorrow, not your salary, not the number your net worth app shows you, the actual cash you could access, how many days could you survive before you're calling a parent, a friend, or a lender? For most working adults across the US, the UK, and Canada, that number lands somewhere around 3 weeks. 21 days, that's the real distance between a life that looks stable from the outside and a life that's one bad month away from a crisis. And almost nobody says this number out loud, because admitting it feels like admitting something is wrong with you, when really, it just means you haven't built a buffer yet. That's fixable. Most of what follows in this video is about exactly that. This isn't about scaring you into panic saving everything you own. It's about being honest with yourself before you try to fix anything, because you can't build wealth on top of a number you're too embarrassed to look at. So keep that 21-day number in mind. Every move from here is really about pushing that number further away from zero. Move 1. Stop financing a personality you haven't finished figuring out yet. Picture a 26-year-old named Noah, sitting in a dealership parking lot in Austin, having just signed for a barely used pickup truck at $590 a month. For 72 months. Nobody held a gun to his head. He wanted people to look at him differently when he pulled into a parking lot. That's the entire transaction, if we're being honest about it. A huge amount of financial stress doesn't come from bad luck. It comes from building a life out of monthly payments wearing the costume of an identity. The truck isn't really a truck, it's a costume. The $1,200 spent on home gym equipment every January that turns into an expensive coat rack by April, that was never really about fitness. That was an attempt to buy a version of yourself, quickly, before the version stopped feeling exciting. And the credit card statement doesn't care about intentions. It adds interest, often somewhere around 24% a year on unpaid balances, and it waits. Here's the thing worth being clear about. People who build real wealth don't skip this kind of spending, because they have superhuman discipline. Usually there's one specific, uncomfortable moment first. A repossession call, a card getting declined at checkout in front of someone they wanted to impress. That flips a switch permanently. After that moment, the question changes. It stops being, can I afford the monthly payment, and becomes, do I actually want to own this thing outright, in cash, today, with no payment plan attached? That single mental shift quietly kills off most bad purchases before they even happen. To be fair, this isn't a blanket rule against ever financing anything. A mortgage or a reasonably priced car loan at a fair rate can make complete sense. The distinction is between financing something because the math works and financing something because the monthly payment hides the real price tag from you. This move isn't about depriving yourself of nice things. It's about refusing to let a monthly bill quietly decide who you think you are. Move 2. Build the honest spreadsheet, even when it's ugly, especially when it's ugly. There's a specific kind of night that changes people. It's usually around 11 at night, laptop open at the kitchen table, a half-finished cup of coffee gone cold, beside a stack of mail nobody's opened yet. This is the night of the honest spreadsheet. You open every account, checking, savings, whatever's been sitting untouched in an old workplace retirement plan since you got hired, the credit card balance you've been quietly avoiding. You write down the real numbers, not the rounded, comfortable version, the actual one. For a lot of people, that number comes out negative. For others, it's a few $1,000s in the black, and it still feels like failure. Because the debt column has $11,000 of student loans sitting in it and $5,000 left over from a wedding 2 years ago. This spreadsheet isn't about shame, even though it usually feels like it in the moment. For most people, it's the first time they've ever seen their entire financial picture in one place, without flinching, without rounding anything up to make it feel better. And something strange happens the second you see the real number. The fear actually gets smaller. Not because the problem shrinks, but because a known number, however bad, is always less frightening than an unknown one. The people who end up ahead of everyone else are not the ones who started with the best number. They're the ones who ran the spreadsheet at all, and then ran it again every single month after that, whether the number had improved or gotten worse. Move 3. Build your first $10,000, and do it in almost complete silence. Crossing $10,000 in savings for the first time does something to a person that nobody really warns you about. It's not excitement. It's closer to disbelief. Picture Grace, 29, standing in a grocery store in Manchester, buying a 4-pound bag of coffee, checking her banking app out of habit the way you check your phone for no reason. And there it is, 10,041 pounds. She puts the phone back in her pocket like she just saw something she wasn't supposed to see. There's a real psychological reason this specific number matters so much. Under $1,000, saving money feels like pure survival. Between $1,000 and $10,000, it still feels fragile, like one bad month, one car repair, one emergency room visit, could wipe it out completely. But somewhere around $10,000, your brain starts to believe, maybe for the first time, that you might actually be capable of building something real, not just avoiding disaster. It's the first amount that feels less like an emergency cushion and more like proof of concept. Here's what almost nobody tells you about hitting this milestone. You won't want to talk about it. Not with parents, not with close friends, sometimes not even with a partner. A quiet isolation starts exactly here. The moment your relationship with money starts diverging from the people around you. You'll sit at a birthday dinner, listening to someone stress about being $200 short for rent, and say nothing, because speaking up feels like bragging, and staying silent feels a little like lying. Nobody warns you about this part, because it doesn't fit the highlight reel version of getting ahead that gets posted online. It's the first taste of a loneliness that gets a little more noticeable at every level from here forward, and it's worth naming early, so it doesn't blindside you later. Move 4. Automate the boring part, and then stop touching it. Somewhere between roughly $12,000 and $40,000 saved, most people make one of two mistakes. Either they let all of it sit in a regular checking account earning next to nothing, or they panic and dump it into something volatile because a coworker mentioned a stock that tripled last year. The move that actually separates people here is almost insultingly boring. Open a high-yield savings account for your emergency cushion, so it's at least earning something instead of losing value to inflation. Then start an automatic monthly contribution into a diversified, low-cost index fund, whether that's inside a workplace retirement plan, an individual retirement account, or a regular taxable investment account. Same amount, same date, every single month, whether the market is up or down that week. You don't check it daily, you don't post about it, there's no dopamine hit, and there's no story to tell at dinner. It's worth being honest here too. Automating your contributions doesn't mean the value never drops. Markets go through real downturns, sometimes scary ones. The point of automating isn't to avoid every dip, it's to stop making emotional, panic-driven decisions in the middle of one. This is the part of wealth building almost nobody shows on camera, because it isn't visually interesting. Picture Marcus, 27, in Phoenix, setting up a $280 automatic transfer on the 3rd of every month into a retirement account for 11 straight years, never touching it, never adjusting it during a downturn, never mentioning it to a single coworker. By the time he's 38, that quiet habit has become something almost nobody around him has. Real, compounding, untouched money. Nobody at his job knows. He drives a 12-year-old sedan. By every visible signal, he looks exactly like everyone else in that office. That invisibility is the entire point. Wealth that's still being built almost never looks like wealth from the outside. Move 5. Attack debt with a date, not a feeling. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from managing debt instead of actually confronting it. Minimum payments, balance transfers, a new 0% introductory offer every 18 months, shuffling the same $7,000 around like a shell game, feeling responsible because you're handling it, while the actual number never really moves. People who get ahead do something most people avoid, because it's uncomfortable in a very specific way. They stop managing the debt and start attacking it, out loud, with a real date attached. Not, I'll pay this off eventually, probably. Instead, this $7,000 balance hits zero by the 14th of November if I put $340 toward it every 2 weeks, starting now. That specificity is uncomfortable, because it makes failure visible too. But it's also the only version that actually works, because vague goals get quietly abandoned, and specific ones get chased. There's a moment in this process, usually around month 7 or 8, where the balance drops below a number that used to feel permanent. 3,900 becomes 2,600, and something shifts. The debt stops feeling like a life sentence and starts feeling like a countdown. That shift, from trapped to timed, is basically the entire psychological engine behind actually paying off debt for good, instead of managing it forever. Move 6, and this is the part almost nobody talks about honestly. Accept that becoming financially different will make you feel different, and be okay with that. Every time your financial life moves up a level, from behind to stable, from stable to saving, from saving to actually building wealth, you don't just get more money. You become a slightly different person, and that person doesn't fit as neatly into your old life anymore. At around $50,000 net worth, you notice you've quietly stopped joining every $70 dinner out just because everyone else is going. At $100,000, conversations about money start to feel careful, like you're choosing your words so you don't sound like you're bragging, or like you're lecturing someone still living paycheck to paycheck. At $250,000, something heavier shows up, a specific distance from people you've known for 15 years. Not because you think you're better than them, but because your daily decisions, your risk tolerance, your definition of an emergency have all quietly drifted from theirs. This is the part that actually breaks people, more than any market downturn or surprise expense ever could. Not the money itself, but the isolation that comes from changing faster than the people around you. Nobody prepares you for the moment your oldest friend asks to borrow $1,000, and you have it easily, and handing it over doesn't hurt you at all. That single fact quietly changes something between you, even if neither of you ever says it out loud. The people who actually reach real financial freedom are the ones who stop expecting everyone around them to understand the journey. They keep the people they love close. They just stop needing those people to relate to every part of the process. That acceptance, quiet, a little uncomfortable, completely undramatic, is the final move. It doesn't show up in any budgeting app, but it's the one that decides whether you actually keep going once the process stops feeling exciting. So here's all 6, back to back. Stop financing a personality you're still figuring out. Face the real number instead of the comfortable one. Build the first $10,000 quietly. Automate the boring part and let it sit long enough to grow. Attack debt with dates instead of vague intentions. And accept that becoming financially different will make you feel different, sometimes lonelier, before it ever makes you feel free. None of these 6 are secret information. There's no hidden formula, no insider trick, nothing available only to people with rich parents or a finance degree. Almost everyone technically has access to this exact list. Almost nobody does all 6, consistently, for as many years as it actually takes. That's the entire gap. Not intelligence, not luck. Not some hidden system built to hold certain people back. Just 6 decisions, repeated quietly, long after they stop feeling exciting. So, which one have you been avoiding? Tell me in the comments, honestly. And if this was useful, subscribe. There's a lot more of this kind of honest money breakdown coming.